I may deeply regret saying this, but haven't we already reached the tipping point in our patience in Carlo Ancelotti? We keep seeing the exact same thing game after game, all season long. Just as we reach the halfway point of 2024-25, I think it's time to shake hands, move on, and off we go. I won't spend too much time talking about the 5-2 humiliation in the El Clasico. You've heard more than enough in the last few days. It was a painful defeat after another painful defeat in October, but these things happen, even to the greatest teams. The really worrying thing that keeps popping into my head is that we see the same thing happening week in, week out. Why on earth do we have to watch Lucas Vazquez play for this team? And not just playing, he's actually wearing the armband. I mean, to be the captain of Real Madrid, you have to provide leadership, be a role model for everyone on the pitch, be there anytime a teammate needs you. I see none of this from Vazquez. But to be perfectly honest, it's not Lucas who's the biggest villain here. He gives his all, but the facts show that he's just not good enough to be a starter for Madrid. That's all. It's not his fault. It's just his level. Instead, the finger should be pointed at Ancelotti. Of course, I have at least 3 or 4 more examples of why the Italian should go, but I'll get to those later. First, let's talk about him as a manager. What about him? Well, he's been coaching since 1995, which means 30 years in the job. In fact, he's the most experienced top coach in the world right now. Not Guardiola, not Mourinho, not Simeone. Yes, these 3 are the only ones who come close to Ancelotti's experience, having also started their coaching careers at the age of 35. But no active manager has been in the job for 30 years. He's also the most successful, the only manager to have won the Champions League 5 times, the only manager to have played in 6 Champions League finals, and the only manager to have won titles in all of Europe's top 5 leagues. When it comes to experience, Ancelotti is the best in the business. Recently, he even hinted that he doesn't like anyone giving him advice on what lineups to choose.
Creo que no hay que olvidarse que he hecho 1300 partidos, he hecho 1300 alineaciones, he hecho casi 4000 cambios.
So why am I saying this? Because all those numbers mean, or at least on paper, that he should know what to do in these moments. And to concede 9 goals in 2 consecutive El Clasicos after winning the double last year and bringing in the long-awaited Kylian Mbappe in the summer is just diabolical. He surely knows that when things are clearly not working, he should experiment. Why the hell are you playing Vazquez? He was easily the worst player on the pitch in those El Clasico failures. Look at that example. He just doesn't know where to position himself, how to position himself. Yes, Barcelona failed to score here, but it was all due to Lewandowski's poor finish. Now look at this one, a long ball to Rafinha, but Vazquez has the advantage to stop the opponent. What happens? The Brazilian makes him look like a complete clown. Not only that, but he even stopped running when Rafinha chipped the ball. I bet he would have cleared it if he kept on playing. Okay, next. El Clasico number 2 of the season, the same garbage play from Vazquez. And once again, Rafinha is his biggest nightmare. The score is 2-1 and Barcelona have taken the lead, but there's still a chance for Madrid. If only they didn't have Vazquez on the pitch, however. In the 39th minute, Jules Koundé played a fantastic ball through to Rafinha, which would have been easily interrupted by Lucas had it not been for his poor defending. Instead, the Brazilian found the ball perfectly and slotted a header home with ease to make it 3-1. But guess what? There's actually some good news for Ancelotti. He might have learnt his lesson and will probably bench Vazquez for the next El Clasico if the Italian is still in charge. And if you're enjoying this video, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel for more of the same? Now, since we've spent enough time on Vazquez, let's say a few words about his defensive partners. Ferland Mendy. The Frenchman is one of the more modest members of the squad, never complaining about anything, which gives him a positive image, but I still don't think he has the level to wear a Real Madrid shirt. And while we're still on the subject, I'm thinking of another stupid decision by Ancelotti, taking Mendy off in the second half for Fran Garcia. Well, unless it's an injury, it just doesn't make sense. And it looks like my boy Skills has noticed that as well.
Switching a left back for a left back in a game where you're playing against 10 men and they're just sitting in the back. Why not throw more forwards on the field?
Another player, Aurelien Tchouameni. Last season we talked about Jude Bellingham and his high transfer fee and how he'd already paid it off with his brilliant performances. I have a question for you. As we're talking about a similar transfer fee, do you think the same could be said about Tchouameni? Back in the day, in 2022, I thought it was absurd to throw 100 mil for a defensive midfielder. And right now, he's just not at that level anymore. And please don't use the "he's not playing on his natural position" excuse. He has played as a centre-back before, in Monaco, and especially if we're talking about a strictly defensive holding midfielder, he should be perfectly fine in playing at the back. He is just another player in very bad form. But again, we have Ancelotti here too. If you have a solid defender like Raul Asensio, who delivered in a couple of games this season, why didn't you start him instead of Tchouaméni? I don't get it. And finally, Rudiger and Thibaut Courtois. Undoubtedly Madrid's best defensive players this season are probably a little beyond. The German does his job brilliantly, rarely making mistakes, while Courtois has been the team's most solid performer in more or less every humiliation Madrid have suffered this season. He delivered in El Clasico, as well as against Liverpool and Milan, and also against Valencia, where Madrid were lucky to come out on top. But as Jurgen Klopp once said, it's never good when your keeper is the best player. And before we move on to other important topics, let's bring another key issue into the mix: Ancelotti's rotations. I mean, what happened to Arda Güler and Endrick? Why are they not playing even when the team needs them? Why, when you're losing 5-2 and struggling to get the ball into the net, do you replace Vinny with Fran Garcia? And since the topic of Arda and Endrick is getting out of control, let me give you their stats. In 2024-25, the so-called Turkish Messi has played 22 games, but only started 8. Endrick is even worse, having started only 1 La Liga game for Real Madrid and getting between 10 and 15 minutes per match when he does come on. And as you can imagine, that happens quite rarely. Apart from all that, I know Madrid is struggling with injuries. Militao is out for the season, Dani Carvajal is out for the season, David Alaba has just returned after 15 months away. I understand that the injury crisis is hurting Madrid, but these things happen in football. Every team has to deal with them, and to really prevent it, you have to be proactive in the market. Instead, what are we seeing from Madrid? They've been linked with absolutely nobody in the January transfer window, apart from these rumours about Trent Alexander-Arnold, who we all know won't be arriving at the Bernabeu this winter if that ever happens. Of course, if they do sign someone by the time this video is uploaded, which I highly doubt, Florentino Perez, you have my apologies, but I really don't see it coming. And if you want me to make the most sensible decision on how Real Madrid could potentially put things right, just sack Ancelotti in the most respectable way possible, or just give him a hint to resign as quickly as possible so he can preserve his dignity. Because there is simply no place for Ancelotti anymore. As far as a replacement, I would love to see former player Xabi Alonso. And do you know why I think he'd be a great choice for Real Madrid? Of course, the experience is not great, but for the short time he's been in charge, he had done amazing things. Bundesliga, German Cup, and a European final in your first full season in the job is amazing. But the thing that really convinces me that he's the one is his history with Real Madrid. He's been there, he has seen things, he knows the dynamics of the club, he knows how to deal with the dressing room, and this is exactly what Cristiano said in a recent interview with Rio Ferdinand, regardless of the fact that he was talking about Man United.
99% is the people who was there in the dressing room, who was player, who was the most successful coaches in the world. Guardiola, Ferguson, there was player before, there was player. There was in the dressing room. They understand, they know how to deal with the players.
And before we finish, let me ask you 2 questions. First, would you like to see Xabi Alonso on the sidelines next season, or even before the end of 2024-25? And second, where do you see Real Madrid going this season? They're still in contention for every trophy, but can they keep up with the pace of Barca, Atletico Madrid, and all the other solid teams in Europe? Let us know below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Blue Card channel for more interesting content, or join our community and get one of our cool loyalty badges. Also, check out our analysis of Atletico Madrid's march to the title in 2024-25. You will love it.